While the weather may be somewhat monotonous here across the UK and Ireland, will remain in a fairly mild theme. It was a little chillier over the weekend compared to what we've seen so far in February. But what is taking place is some very interesting things, I must say. Thanks for clicking on to the Tuesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. Hope everybody is well wherever you are. This is the 5 day temperature anomaly profile over the northern hemisphere, and you notice the focus of bitterly cold air is on the other side of the pole. Our friends in Central and Eastern Asia seeing very, very cold conditions compared to average here, and we remain on the warm side of things, especially across Central and Western Europe. The UK and Ireland, notice here, slightly below average over the last 5 days, which is quite interesting considering Europe has been very mild compared to average. And you see the core of two areas of warmer than average in the last 5 days, one being over the central United States and Canada, and also over Central Europe. Now, there is stuff going on. Now, remember what I showed you about 10 days or so with regards to the lower stratospheric temperature profile. High pressure building from East Asia across the top into North America here. And what we are essentially going to see is as you see the warming taking place from Eurasia across the top of the pole towards North America, that expands the stratosphere and it contracts the troposphere. By contracting the troposphere underneath an expanding stratosphere tends to lead to pressure rises underneath where that blocking shows up in the lower stratosphere. And what we are seeing is we are starting to see a little bit of a shift taking place in the overall 500 millibar pattern. So if we look at the what's going on over North America at the moment, some very, very extreme contrast take place now. In China, we've seen a remarkable last 10-day period. Be sure to check out the Global Weather and Climate Report that was issued back on Sunday. I talk a little bit more about that and how we've went from record February temperatures to record cold February temperatures in the space of just a few days across China. Very, very warm air building northwards over central and eastern China. Then we've seen probably the strongest cold front, not only of the winter, but one of the strongest cold fronts you'll probably ever see, even in a country like China that sees extremes in terms of heat and cold, severe weather, significant rainfall. It's like the United States in many respects, where it has a connection both between the deep tropics and also Siberia, with it being a continental climate. You see these big wild extremes taking place, and I've also given you some explanation with regards to these wild flips and back and forth temperatures during the course of the autumn and winter season, how that may be having an influence on these stratospheric warmings that we've seen over the last couple of months. Very fascinating, very complicated stuff. Some of the ideas that I have, there's no scientific background to it. It's really my own thinking and my own theories with regards to what I think is taking place within the atmosphere. But we have got a very extreme situation now developed over North America. So we've seen it over Eastern Asia, we're now seeing it over North America. And I think some of this is the byproduct to what has taken place within the stratosphere. Now, whether it's directly from troposphere into stratosphere or stratosphere into troposphere, I do not know. But you can let me know in the comment section below what you think. But you can see here that we have already seen some remarkable warmth getting lifted northwards out of the Gulf of Mexico, southern United States, up through the Great Lakes region and into eastern Canada. Meanwhile, we've got extremely cold air getting driven south over British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan here. That is driving south. And in between, we have a very notable frontal system. And we are going to see temperatures rise potentially to about 77 degrees Fahrenheit in Chicago this afternoon. Some of the warmest air you'll ever see at the end of February in this region of the United States. Now, 77 degrees Fahrenheit is roughly, I believe, 25 Celsius. So that is pretty warm for this time of the year. Bearing in mind that the average temperature is around 37 Fahrenheit, which equates to, I believe, about 2 or 3 Celsius. So you're talking about nearly a 20-degree above average temperature in Chicago, up towards Madison, um, up through the Great Lakes in the southern portions of Quebec, Ontario as well. And then what we are going to see is this bitterly cold air and potent cold front sweep south and southeast across the country. And by the time we reach Wednesday afternoon, we could be talking about 19 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Fahrenheit. That, by the way, is a daytime high of about -6. So it could go from 25 Celsius to -6 for a daytime high in the space of a couple of days. So what does that mean? Why am I telling you this about a European outlook and talking about China, the United States? It's because of the implications that may be having on the atmosphere. So if you look then at the jet stream, we have some very notable, interesting things going on. Quite an El Nino esque type of jet stream profile, not just across the North Atlantic, but across the entire Northern Hemisphere. So bitterly cold air associated with this 1044, 1050 millibar area of high pressure extending from Kazakhstan all the way to the far east of Siberia here. When you've got very warm conditions over the maritime continent, in other words, Indonesia up towards Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, when you've got really warm, hot conditions here and bitterly cold conditions across the north, you have a stronger jet stream taking place. But remember what's taking place within the stratosphere into the troposphere. That is then causing these height rises to take place further north. What we are seeing is we've got quite a lot of blocking starting to develop within the pattern. You can see here one branch, the polar jet, moving across southern Alaska into the northwest of Canada. That is going to help continue to drive this cold southwards. In the meantime, we've got very, very warm conditions across the southern US. In between, we get a strengthening of the jet stream, and that is what we're going to see in the next few days here. But you notice these kind of north and south branches of the jet. I believe this would be considered the subtropical jet, which tends to be enhanced when you've got El Nino conditions. You also enhance the jet stream, especially down in the subtropics or the tropics, when you have got abnormally warm sea surface temperatures also here. But you notice there what takes place as we move towards the end of this work week. You're starting to see a strengthening of the jet exiting the eastern side of Asia. We've got this wheel of blocking high pressure over the North Pacific, and that is going to then start to kind of reroute the jet and cause the buckling to take place. And when you start to buckle the jet, you're then forcing milder northwards towards the pole. We're also forcing very colder down towards the equator here. And it becomes a little bit of a messy, amplified type of pattern. And this is what we are going to see. We're going to start to see in our side of the North Atlantic increasingly chillier conditions towards the second half of this work week. I say the word chilly because it's not going to be anything significantly cold. Unfortunately, this is why I don't think the stratospheric warming is going to necessarily lead to anything significant or major. In other words, a beast from the east. But notice here what's taking place. We've got this strong jet exiting eastern China through the Koreas, through Japan. And then what we're starting to see is this branch going north. We've still got this subtropical jet cutting underneath. We may start to see an atmospheric river developing across southern California in the northwestern parts of Mexico. Also, we've got the northern branch of the jet across the northern United States. So we don't have extreme cold continuing to drive south. We've got this jet further north. That is quite an El Nino-like situation. But now notice here what's taking place over the North Atlantic, and this is pretty crucial. You see this big northward surge of jet stream winds all the way up the western side of Greenland here, round the top and down on the other side of that high. So we're seeing this kind of buckling of the jet here. And what that does is it forces warmer air to lift northwards towards the pole. And this is that expansion of the stratosphere, contraction of the troposphere, and you're starting to see the cold getting displaced south and the warm getting forced northwards to replace that cold air that is getting discharged south. Now, if you look at the 850 temperature anomaly chart here off the GFS, you can see what I'm talking about. So we've got this exceptionally warm air, central and eastern United States. The reason why it's getting lifted north on the eastern side of the continent is because we've got a discharge of very cold air. Now, this could be the byproduct of that stratospheric warming situation here. If we look at the chart, you can see where the blocking is taking place. We're seeing that extending from Japan, the Koreas, northeastern portions of Asia here. When you've got these raids, you've got increased pressure rises across the top here into northern portions of North America here. And then we'll go back to the 850 temperature anomaly chart, and you can see the reflection at 5,000 feet in terms of the air mass, the contrast compared to average that is. So the cold air gets sunk south, possibly in response to that stratospheric warming. As that gets forced south, it's then forcing the warm air out of the Caribbean, out of the Gulf of Mexico to go up into eastern Canada. And we've also got some cold and average air over Greenland at the moment. But watch what happens as we play through the next 5 or 6 days or so. Watch what happens to the warm air over eastern North America. It is then getting forced east and northwards and up through Greenland. You also notice here that we've got a lot of milder than average air extending from Central Europe up through Scandinavia and towards the polar region as well. So therefore, we are starting to see the milder conditions getting lifted northwards here. But look at the contrast now over Greenland and over the Arctic region. We've got that lobe of bitterly cold air that was over western portions of North America. That is then getting forced eastwards off North America, and you can see the very, very warm air to the north of it. And that is the buckling of the jet. That is that amplification of the pattern overall. But one thing is pretty crucial to say. We've got areas of low pressure. Rather than it being a strong high, we've got a beast from the east or anything like that. Our actual source of cold air is actually off Canada that originated possibly over Siberia, crossed over the pole on the North America side, into the western side of the United States, and across the US, out over the Atlantic, and eventually it reaches our shores here in the UK and Ireland here. But all the while, so there's that cold air that originated possibly over Siberia, across North America, now crossing over the Atlantic. As it crosses over the Atlantic, it's warming up, so we aren't going to see anything significantly cold. But you notice here, as we continue to play through this GFS loop, you notice here that the UK eventually, towards the end of week 1, beginning of week 2 of March, long way off, but I'm trying to show you how this pattern could be evolving. And you notice here that we're starting to see the warmth continuing to linger over Greenland, over the Arctic region, and the UK holds on to something a little bit colder than average here. And you notice it lingers on towards the middle portions of the month here. But it's a very, very messy picture when you're transporting unusually warm air north, unusually cold air south. Then the models have a hard time understanding the distribution of competing air masses. So certainly it is a very interesting situation developing as we go through the next couple of weeks. And the Arctic Oscillation, according to the GFS ensemble, is expected to go negative. Notes here towards the end of week 1 into week 2 of March. The Arctic Oscillation is going negative. So this could be the byproduct of the stratospheric warming, then the response to 500 millibars. And as that warmth gets lifted up into the Arctic region, we see the Arctic Oscillation going negative here. The NAO also is now starting to go into negative territory. Remember, over the last week or so, I've showed you the NAO only going towards neutral, but some of the GFS members now are starting to show a trend towards negative. Is it going to be anything major? I don't think it will be. And the reason why I don't think so is because of the time of the year. We're increasing the hours of daylight, we're decreasing the hours of darkness. So, therefore, the potential within the pattern is lesser when you have a middle portion of March. Now, we could have a nagging chill that lingers mid to late March. We could see some snow, for example, but nothing extreme. No beast from the east like 2018. This is a different beast from before. So I think it's going to get very interesting as we go into the spring season with regards to the type of weather pattern we get. How much rainfall are we going to see? March through May is going to be open to question as well. There's going to be a lot of residual fuel within that warmer than average Atlantic, for example, possibly fueling a continuation of stronger than average jet stream winds. I'm not sure about that. It's going to get rather complicated, I think, as we go through the next week or so. So I'm going to end the video today by looking very quickly at the GFS overview chart here. We've got a series of frontal systems moving from west to east. There's ups and there's downs in terms of the temperature profile. We're probably going to see slightly above average, slightly below average over the next several days. And then as we move towards the upcoming weekend here, with that high shifting slightly west and northwest over the North Atlantic, we're going to drag in something a little bit colder towards the end of this week. With the area of low pressure in place as well, you may see low level rainfall, high level snowfall, and temperatures at to slightly below average. As you play through this run off the GFS, you notice here that the area of low pressure kind of gets stuck in place over the UK. It kind of spins around the upper trough. The reason why is we've got high pressure both to the north and to the east that then traps the eastward progress of that low that originates over the Atlantic, moves into our shores, and then comes up against the resistance. Now, as we play towards the end of week 1 of March, remember what I showed you with regards to the transport of warmth up towards the polar region. We start to see the jet stream becoming a lot more buckled. Got the jet moving northwards, and then of course that downstream branch of the jet has to go southwards when you've got that arm going northwards. We're building high pressure to the north and northeast of the British Isles towards the end of week 1, and we may see something of a Scandinavian high developing. Notice here we've got areas of low pressure forced to the south, and this may be a somewhat chillier flavour of weather towards this time frame here. So you can notice here that we have got at 8:50 something a little bit colder moving in from the east underneath that high position between Greenland and Scandinavia here. But this is a long way out. I'm just trying to give you the idea as to where I think the pattern may be going. This is all about the big picture, understanding and trying to learn how the weather works and how patterns evolve. So so stay tuned. If you haven't already done so, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate your support, and I'll be back again with more tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.